I see you have some DVDs behind you.
Yeah, an embarrassing amount, I would say. We're
Aha! Showtime!
I get excited about these new releases, anniversary releases, and 4Ks and everything like that. Are you somebody who's interested in that sort of thing?
Yes and no, actually. This is the first re-release I've ever done where I allowed the images to change. I've always, retimed it, and you can do more noise reduction and go to 4K, and there's those scenes that you always felt were too blue, or that shot that was too bright, that you can fix. And I've always done that, but I've never changed any internal footage until Addams Family. In fact, I always felt that whenever you see these special releases, you always go, like the director's cuts, you always say, oh, now I can see why they cut out all that crap that the director now has put back in. Like in Spielberg's director's cut of Close Encounters, I now see why they didn't let Richard Dreyfuss go into the spaceship, which, in Spielberg's director's cut they did. But in this case, I felt that it was a mistake that we ever cut half of the Mamushka out. Which is this amazing song and dance number that Raul Julia and Chris Lloyd do. And I regretted it soon after we released the movie. So when Paramount called me 6 months ago, and said, we're going to release a 4K version, do you want to be involved? I said, yes, I'd love to retime it. There were some scenes I thought were weirdly garishly blue in the timing, some other things. But then I said, is there any chance you can find the original negative and we can put back in the entire Mamushka? And they found it. They found the cut. They found the original negative. And I'm really happy that we put it back. And usually I'm not a guy who wants to add more stuff back in. But I feel great about this because Raul is so brilliant doing that song.
So very much far from the much sadder version of Sophie's Choice.
Exactly. You've read the book.
I have. One of the elements that has always stuck with me over the past 30 years are all the things that are going on in the front and background of this film, whether it's Morticia cutting the roses to display the stems, or Granny chasing after a pet flavored dinner while Gomez is watching a talk show. How many of those left of center moments were planned, and how many of them came in the moment when the talent and yourself were in that space seeking out the weirdness and the darkness of all things?
I do very little improvisation on set, very little discovery. All that stuff was planned out. A lot of it is stolen from images from the Charles Addams drawings. What I loved about the Charles Addams drawings is he lets the audience find where the comedy is. Sometimes you look at one of his drawings and it will take 20 seconds to realize where the joke is. So what you're saying about foreground and background is really quite true. Another example of that is Fester is in the foreground talking to his mother. Again, very wide lens, 21 millimeter or 17.5. He's in the foreground on the phone with his mother, while Pugsley has Wednesday tied to a chair in the background, and Pugsley runs up and brings 2 bottles, and Fester on the phone looks at him and goes, arsenic, I can't remember what the other poison is, but he looks at 2 poison, and then he picks the arsenic, and Pugsley runs back in the background. It all plays out in one shot. And what I love about it is it lets the audience discover where the comedy is. I could have cut to an insert of the bottles. I could have cut back to Wednesday being tied up. But instead, you play it out just like Charles Addams did. And by the way, I think that may have even been stolen from one of his drawings. That, to me, was the joy of setting up all those jokes. But nothing was discovered on the set. It's all storyboarded and shot listed and figured out ahead of time.
So what's the balance that goes into deciding we're going to put a little more focus on this with the camera versus let's let that be a discovery for somebody who's watching it?
In general, I think comedy plays out in 2 shots. I hate cutting to a close-up for the punchline.
Mhm.
I hate cutting in general. If it can play out in a master, my favorite comedy directors are Howard Hawks, Bringing Up Baby and His Girl Friday, and
Mhm.
Preston Sturgis, Palm Beach Story, Sullivan's Travels. So much of their comedy plays out in master shots. My favorite movie is Doctor Strangelove. Again, whenever he cuts to a close-up for a punchline is when it's not working. It's so much better to let the comedy play out wider. So you just figure out what's important in the scene. Sometimes the important thing is the camera following thing
Yeah.
and making things seem like a living being. We didn't shoot any CGI. It was all Chris Hart, on dollies and erasing the dolly and stuff like that. So it's just something I've always been drawn to, both as a cinematographer and a director, is using the camera as a storytelling device.
So yeah, actually, speaking of some of that camera work, did any of that go into some of the first person perspective of like the arrow going into Pugson's mouth, and then thing going down the
Right.
hallway, and then Mustard turning totally upside down and that sort of stuff?
That's me. The wide stuff is Charles Addams, and the camera moves and the using the camera as a storytelling device, like the camera being the arrow's point of view, or pulling with thing, or things, or thing racing down all the hallways to answer the doorway when they at the end of the seance. That's if you look at the work I did as a cinematographer, Throw Mama from the Train, Raising Arizona, Blood Simple, 3 O'Clock High, I'm a big believer in a very self-conscious camera, that the camera is another character in your movie. So that's where that comes from. So it's part Charles Addams and part Barry.
I have to touch on that I had a torch passing moment with my son earlier this year watching this, where I got to experience it again from a youthful perspective. And I'm sure you've had moments like that yourself with relatives, friends. How has your relationship changed with the material over the years in response to any shared experiences you've had? And what has been the most meaningful viewing to you of this film?
I wish I could give you a really good emotional answer, but I like to move on. I go decades without looking at the films I've directed, or I never read reviews of the movies I directed. So I don't, boy, I wish I could give you a good answer, but when I see movies I've directed again, I usually think about all the things I wish I could go back and cut out and make shorter. This was the only movie I've worked on where I thought I wanted to make it longer and put back in the whole Mamushka number.
Yeah.
But normally when I see something again, which I haven't seen in decades, I go, oh God, what was I thinking? Why did I do that? I should have cut that out, but not Addams Family.
I don't know. I love your films, and if you haven't watched them in a while, you're missing out. Um, we're we're just about out of time, but I really wanted my childhood, like my 9-year-old self, would want to ask this, which is about the blood splatter stage sequence. I think that's one of the most genius moments of comedy ever. Was cracking that tone tricky to navigate, or going in, because I imagine you're going in as straight as possible, but what were some of those conversations that you were having with Mr. Workman and Miss Ritchie about what they needed to understand to be able to pull that off, and the audience being able to react with disgust, and then Gomez and
Yeah.
Morticia in the background?
Again, I think I may have stolen that moment. It was not in the original script, and I told Scott that I wanted a scene like that, and showed him, I think, a drawing from a Charles Addams cartoon that reminded me of that moment. And I said, I described what I wanted the scene to be, that it'd be just incredibly violent, coming after, getting to know you. Everyone is outraged and become oil paintings except the Addams Family. So Rudnick wrote the scene. We had a great fencing teacher. His last name is Barry, and I can't remember his first name. Help the kids learn how to sword play. We had a great team that figured out, how to get the arm to come off and how to hide her real arm. And in fact, our cinematographer was sick. And for several days, we brought in my good buddy from film school, Bill Pope, to shoot that scene. Bill Pope also shot the first 3 Matrix movies, shot Men in Black 3 for me. And Bill came in and shot that scene. But again, you got to play it for reality. Wednesday and Pugsley aren't playing it for jokes. They are doing Shakespeare, and they are going to cut, and that's why that works. And then the reverse, you want people to play the reality of being just coming off from getting to know you and being outraged and shocked. So no one in that scene is trying to be funny. And that's why it's so incredibly funny. And I love that scene so much. And it's right up Charles Addams's tonal alley.
The Gallagher fan in me really appreciated it too. Well, I know we're out of time, but I just got this in the mail, so I've never seen it, so I'm very excited to check it out.
There are parts of it that are really good. Yeah, thanks.